No, not at all. All right, is everyone ready to get started? All right, it's 5:30. We'll call the BZA meeting to order. Ms. Fetters, can you please call roll?
I didn't print out a sheet. David Cash,
Here.
Gary Gross,
Here.
AJ Mantel,
Here.
Stephen Wanamaker,
Here.
Tom Evans.
And will everyone please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Since it's the first meeting of the year, the first item on your agenda is to elect a chair and vice chair. So if anyone has any nominations for those positions, we'll entertain them now.
Any volunteers?
I was going to nominate Mr. Cash.
I'll second that.
Mr. Cash,
Probably should abstain.
Mr. Gross,
Yes.
Mr. Mantel,
Yes.
Mr. Wanamaker,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
and then vice chair. Oh, I do want to preface this with Jerry Heidenreich did not want to put himself in the running, and he is absent today. So I'll let you carry on with your vice chair nominations.
Well, I should have asked you, Dave, if you wanted to accept the nomination first, I guess.
Well, that's okay, that's all right, that's all right. And what I'll do is, I'll return the favor and nominate Stephen Wanamaker for vice chair. I will ask if he will accept that nomination.
I will accept.
Okay.
Can I get a second on that?
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. Cash?
Yes.
Mr. Gross?
Yes.
Mr. Mantel?
Yes.
Mr. Wanamaker?
Abstain.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Cash, as the newly elected chair, would you like to continue on with the meeting?
I thought that that's what you'd be doing. All right, first order of business then would be the public hearing for an area and dimensional variance, case number 1-25. This is a request by, oh, I'm sorry, thank you. The first order of business would be to approve the minutes of the December 4th, 2024 meeting. Has anybody have a motion to approve or amendments or changes?
I move to approve the minutes. Second.
All right, Mr. Cash?
Yes.
Mr. Gross?
Yes.
Mr. Mantel?
Yes.
Mr. Wanamaker?
Yes.
And Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Okay, the next order of business then would be the public hearing on the variance for an area and dimensional variance, case number 1-25. Excuse me, this is a request by applicant Ben Rancic on behalf of Shen Ming Yu for an area and dimensional variance for the property at 4680 Caprice Drive to determine the screening requirements needed per Middletown Development Code 1216.10 A and B. The property is Zone B3 General Business District. The variance requested is to allow for reduction of screening requirements for off-street loading areas due to the location of the lot lines of the parcel. At this point, do I hand it over to you? At this point, I'll ask, oh, you need to be sworn. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide this Board of Zoning Appeals be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay. All right, if you would, Ms. Fetters, would you give us the staff report, I guess?
Yes. So this is for 4680 Caprice. This is in modification to the first round when you saw them in November, I believe. Per the application submitted, the applicant requests to determine the percentage of screening required due to the location of the property lines. The applicant notes that the property lines that would be the location of the screening for the truck docks, which run through the center of the parking lot, qualifies the case for a variance. And if you can see either in your staff packet or on the screen, the proposed screening is going to be the squiggly lines right here, where my cursor is on the screen. So the purpose of the B3 General Business District is to provide for intense commercial and office development in close proximity to the interstate and high-volume streets that can provide needed goods and services to the residents of the city, region, and beyond. Such district is most appropriately located adjacent to freeway interchanges and along major streets. According to the application, the applicant does not believe, if granted, it will negatively affect the surrounding properties or affect the delivery of governmental services. The applicant states the properties on each corner of where the... Okay, copy and paste error. Ignore that last sentence. Per the Development Code, Chapter 1216.10, Screening Requirements, Part A, in addition to all the other forms of required landscaping, screening shall be required to conceal specific areas of high visual or auditory impact or hazardous areas from adjacent less intense uses and from views of public right-of-way. Such areas shall be screened at all times unless specified, regardless of adjacent uses, districts, or other proximate landscaping material. And then Part B of that, screened items, it does include off-street loading areas. And then Part 3 of that, so screening methods, the following items are permitted for use as screening materials, and more than one method may be used on a lot or site. So that includes vegetative materials, an opaque fence or wall consistent with the standards for buffer type A, or integration into the building design, so false walls or other architectural screening that utilizes the same building materials and colors as the principal building. The required screening shall have a height sufficient enough to screen the applicable items, provided in accordance with any other applicable sections of this code. Alternative screening methods not listed may be proposed as an alternative equivalent review application. And then lastly, the last part does not apply here. And then per the Middletown Development Code, the requirement for legal notice for variance request and meeting notice letters for the proposed area and dimensional variance were sent to all property owners contiguous and directly across the street or public right-of-way, and no comments have been received to date. So here is your variance application. Here are pictures of the property. Here is your zoning map. Here is your review criteria. And then here is your time limits and appeals. And that will conclude my staff report.
Any questions for Ms. Fetters?
So through other mechanizations, I'm assuming the loading docks were granted. Is that correct?
The zoning permit has not been applied for yet, but it is assumed that it would be approved administratively.
And so screening is not required on the Brill Boulevard part, because that parcel is not directly attached to the right-of-way. Is that right? In the parking lot? If you go up one more to the drawing, maybe, yeah, that one there. So the top border,
So it would all have to be technically screened.
okay, okay.
So this is definitely where the reduction of that screening comes in.
So it could be a matter of allowing some in some places and allowing a variance in others, okay.
Yes.
Okay, but just off the top of my head, is it required, even though it's not touching the right-of-way?
It is required.
Okay, just because it's in view of a right-of-way, okay. Just wanted to clarify.
It's where this Part A comes in, regardless of
No, high vision, okay.
any other adjacent uses, districts, or proximate landscaping material.
Could you go back to that, the overhead, the schematic there, yeah. I'm confused. I didn't see any specific parameters for screening. Do I understand that because there's a loading dock on the west side, which is the black rectangle, and there are also loading docks, I think, on the north side of the building? Next to
Yep.
Caprice?
Yes, there is one
So,
right there.
do I understand to comply with the code that there should be screening along the entire perimeter of the property bordering South Briel and Caprice?
I
Except for
believe
exits and
so.
entrances?
I believe so.
Like, do you just mean like along the blue line, pretty much?
Well, along the entire, now, if I recall correctly, this lot here where this Hilt and DM and this specific building, there's a lot line, is there not, to another lot that extends north and south there, just on the east side of South Briel? Isn't there another lot that, shoot, you remember,
Hang
this has
on.
come up before, in front of that property on Briel Boulevard there.
So all the yellow lines you see on there are the approximate lot lines.
Yeah, see if
Yes.
there's a yellow line that extends parallel to, if you can put your cursor on there. Right here, yeah, you've got it. Over one to the right, just a little bit, the next line. I think that's a lot line of property belonging to this individual
Yes.
here.
So this little polygon is the subject parcel. Then you have
Yep.
the flag parcel, where the panhandle, this is the panhandle part, and then here's the pan.
Right. So if he doesn't, if the owner of this building doesn't own that square property on the northwest corner there of Caprice and South Briel, right there, I mean, he has to screen the entire perimeter of his own lot, is what the code is saying.
Yes. But he does not own this little square lot.
Right,
The
I
owner of
understand
this lot owns
Yeah.
the panhandle
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
So like personally, I have driven on, as all of us have, on Briel Boulevard, especially like on the way home, like my whole life. Personally, I think it would look a little weird to just have a fence in the middle of the parking lot there. However, I do think that something that stood out to me was in the variances, it's not intended that a variance be granted merely to remove inconveniences or financial burdens, which was what I thought this was when I read over it the first time, but I now see that it just would look really weird, and I think I agree. But I would love to just see what the applicants have to say before you want to move on to that stage.
I do not believe that the applicant or the property owner are here.
They're not here.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions for Ms. Fetters?
I guess I'm having a hard time understanding this too, where the screening would be. Is That squiggly line you had before is, yeah, that one, is that just where it wouldn't be? And then it's. the
That's where
rest-
they're proposing, but the way I understood it is the applicant just wants to determine if and where they have to screen, because they can't really meet. If they were to put the screening, in the parking lot,
It'll look
So
weird.
they're asking for an advisory opinion.
they're asking for a reduction in screening is how I interpret it.
If I may too, I remember they weren't exactly speaking in opposition of the loading docks, but they were speaking of a concern of the loading docks about there is an easement along there and traffic does need to flow through there. So I don't think there's any way they can screen through the parking lot.
I remember that now.
Yeah, so
There
I-
is an easement.
So really, their squiggly lines, if you would like to say it, would probably be the only feasible place they could do screening that wouldn't affect how ugly it would look and the easement and traffic, so, but
Did the applicant indicate the type of screening that they would be using? Height-wise, is there a height limitation on screening if it's not vegetation?
I would have to look at walls or fences or what the height you can have in the district. I want to say it's 8, if I recall correctly, but it could be 6.
I think it just said that just as long as it's tall enough to cover it.
Well, then you get to consult the
Yeah,
fences and
exactly.
walls section.
Did the applicant have any contact with you regarding this evening's hearing?
No, I sent them a letter, as I did with the nearby property owners. In the past, but the applicant has been really responsive. I did not call him, but he originally was supposed to be on the December meeting. Turns out we needed a public notice since they're totally changing their application. So then it got kicked to the February meeting.
So this particular application's not been continued before?
No.
Okay. Any other questions?
Since we're talking about, if you'd go back to the one with the blue lines that we were, so in like the top right corner here where the proposed screening is, the squiggly lines, how do we feel about just giving a variance to not put any screening? And hear me out. As an ecologist, I find out in the woods and out while I'm exploring, just old fence lines that become a place where invasive species take root. They're not as easy to maintain, and invasive species have been proven to be harmful to the economy and the rest of the community at large. So I think just having just a stretch of random fence that doesn't necessarily need to be there isn't, personally, I wouldn't like to see it, but I'm not really going to die on that hill either.
personally, AJ, I was envisioning a vegetative barrier anyways. That's kind of what I was imagining. I think a wall or a fence would look a little out of place there. That if they did some kind of hedging, I think would be, at the minimum, would probably look the best.
Well, I think, since the applicant has been responsive to the planning, to your office, Claire, is that correct?
Yes.
And not having a real idea of what type of screening we're talking about here, height requirements or anticipated height of the screening, it might be prudent to continue this a month to give the applicant. Nothing's going on right now anyway. It's not like anything started and they're halfway through construction. So it might be, I think it'd be prudent to consider moving this to the March's meeting and get a little more specificity on this intended screening and flexibility that they may have in, that the applicant may have in accommodating the development code as well as the variance criteria.
Before anybody makes a motion, I just want to make sure we open the public hearing
Oh, I'm sorry.
and then close it and then,
I'm sorry.
no, don't.
I'm sorry. Okay. At this point, I will open the meeting for anyone who is in favor of the variance application. Anyone, please come forward and you'll be sworn. Anyone who is in opposition to the variance, please come forward and you'll be sworn. All right, thank you. So at this point, I will close the public meeting of this on this variance and reiterate what I said before I closed the meeting, or the public portion of the meeting.
Yeah, if we think more time would be necessary, I mean, I guess, well, I guess it probably would be prudent, as Mr. Cash said, to have a little bit more information. If you grant the variance and then they put up a giant cinder block wall that's 10 foot tall, then that kind of defeats the purpose of what we've been talking about. It'd be kind of nice to know a little bit more detail of what they're willing to do. I would move this to the March meeting and have Ms. Fetters reach out to the applicant.
Second.
Mr. Cash?
Yes.
Mr. Gross?
Yes?
Mr. Mentel?
Yes.
Mr. Wanamaker?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Okay, the next matter for consideration is area and dimensional variance case number 2-25. This is a request by applicant Will Stevenson on behalf of property owners Mark and Sue Royal for an area and dimensional variance for the property at 6642 Roycroft Drive to construct a deck in the rear yard of the house that will exceed the aggregate square footage permitted for accessory buildings and structures. The property is zoned R4P, Planned Development District. The variance requested is to allow the applicant to exceed the 25% aggregate square footage by approximately 22%. Ms. Fetters?
All right, per the application submitted, the applicant requests the variance due to exceptional topographic condition. The applicant notes that the entire backyard grades downhill significantly to the pond, leaving the backyard unusable for playing with their grandchildren and or entertaining. The construction of the deck would substitute for a backyard. The applicant does not believe, if granted, the construction of the deck would negatively impact surrounding properties or affect the delivery of governmental services. On the screen, in the second paragraph, is the purposes of the two districts, but essentially, when a planned development goes in, the base zoning of an accessory structure, those accessory uses or structures are not approved as part of your planned development, they just fall under the applicable zoning district. And then on the right there, you'll see the very light setbacks of the deck from the property line. And then per the Middletown Development Code, Chapter 1204, Part 10, site development standards, the corner lot, or the lot in question is a corner lot, which is a lot that has street frontage on two intersecting streets. The subject property is fronted by Sawyer's Mill Drive and Roycroft Drive. The approximate square footage of the subject's property's backyard is 1,800 square feet. Per the Middletown Development Code, Chapter 120601, Part B, Part 11, Part A, for residential districts, the aggregate square footage of the following accessory buildings and structures shall not exceed more than 25% of the total rear yard. And that includes a variety of structures, including porches and decks. With the approximate square footage of the backyard equating to approximately 1,800 square feet, up to approximately 450 square feet of accessory buildings and structures are permitted for the subject property. There is currently 176 square footage of accessory structures on the property. That is about 140 square feet of covered porch and 36 square feet of concrete patio, both located in the rear of the house. The proposed deck, per the zoning application submitted, there is a proposed upper deck addition to the existing covered porch equating to 120 square feet for a total of 260 square feet of accessory structure on the upper deck. The proposed lower deck will equate to 620 square feet. In total, the applicant proposes a total of 880 square feet of the accessory structure, equivalent to 46.8% of the backyard square footage, a 21.8% exceedance of the 25% aggregate square footage permitted. If the concrete patio remains that is on the lower level of the house, it will be a total of 916 square feet of accessory structure, equivalent to 50.9% of the backyard square footage, a 25.9 exceedance of the 25% aggregate square footage permitted. Per the Middletown Development Code, the legal notice was published as well as mailed letters to all property owners contiguous and directly across the street, and no comments have been received to date. Here is the variance application. Here's their zoning application, and then on the right, you can see where maybe the covered deck was approved as part of the house build, as well as the concrete patio underneath. Here's the proposed elevations. The upper deck addition. Here's the house in question. Here's the zoning map. Here's your review criteria. The time limit and appeals process. And that will conclude my staff report.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Fetters?
Would you mind the picture with the rear view of the home? Would you mind? Yeah, right there. So there is some screening. Okay.
Yes, there are some evergreen trees there.
It looks like the majority of the square footage of the deck is on the lower level.
The proposed, yes.
Could you go all the way back? There's another overhead that was where in red, the proposed deck, lower deck, and upper deck were drawn. They're right there, right there. Is the small porch is already, okay, that's porch. Is the small red square, is that the upper?
The addition to
The upper deck that has stairs to, as far as you know, as far as you're aware of?
Yes,
The lower
so I
deck?
believe the red square, yes, is going to be the addition to the covered porch, and then there will be stairs going on the east side
Yeah,
down to the bigger
right,
red polygon.
okay. And that was 120 square feet, I think you read,
Yes, the upper
the upper deck.
addition, yes.
So even though that is on the upper deck and it actually mirrors part of the lower deck and doesn't take up any ground, it's still considered as part of the total square footage?
Yep.
Okay. Obviously so. I mean, I guess I wonder the logic of that since it's not on the ground and spread out and it's smaller than the upper deck, so.
Yeah, I thank you for asking that to clarify that, because I was going to ask the same thing, but.
Any other questions for Ms. Fetters?
I guess to further clarify on that, if they were just adding that addition and not adding the lower addition, we would still consider that to be an additional square footage.
Yeah, okay. So it doesn't have to be in any particular proximity to the ground?
No.
As long as it covers a certain portion of the backyard? Okay, all right, all right. Any other questions that might have
Yes.
generated?
Cash. Any environmental type concerns with the runoff coming, because now you're gonna block that hill or want to disturb that hill as to some degree. Any concerns with?
The only, I believe there's an easement, but it's very close to their property line, so it's not touching any.
Any other questions? Okay, at this point then I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the variance, if you'll come down here to the, is that microphone now working? I believe so. Okay, good. If you'll come down to the dais and I'll swear you in, one at a time. Thank you. Sir, no, I don't know which one. Speak into one of them. Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And if you'll identify yourself for the record, please. All right, thank you, sir. Thank you. Any questions?
Is that something you'd consider doing? Is that something you would consider doing at your home? Oh, well, there we go then. There we go. Good. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Any other questions? All right, sir, thank you. Sir, you want to address the board?
Yes, please.
You'll- Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Identify yourself, if you will. Okay. Yes, sir, Mr. Royal. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Any questions for Mr. Royal?
I of an overall question, Mr. Cash, and I don't know if Mr. Royal can answer it. So obviously, you either mow or you have somebody mow this property for you, correct? Oh, is the HOA takes care of that? Okay. How then, because if you're gonna have a deck run out most of the length of that back lot, a large portion of your yard now is covered by deck, right? How are we controlling any of that growth underneath the deck?
But you have your contractor here? Good deal, all right. No, not yet, sir. We'll we have to grill you first.
I'm good. Good, thank you, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Royal?
Do you plan on putting any further screening where these like pine trees are? I mean, it's your choice on how much privacy you really want. I'm just kind of curious. I meant more like herbaceous screening. Like, good deal.
In just a second, yes, ma'am.
I think some of my own personal interest is bleeding through into the professional environment, and I'm not really like too concerned about it. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, the coloring, is it gonna be white railings and everything to match kind of what you have here now, or? Okay. Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Royal? All right, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And identify yourself, ma'am. Any questions for Mrs. Royal?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, thank you. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Identify yourself if you would.
Is there going to be a lattice or anything around the bottom, or is it going to be open? Okay. What is the clearance on that at the very farthest? Yeah. Okay. So you will be able to see the posts and
Any other questions? What was your last name, sir? Any questions for Mr. Stevenson? Okay, sir, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the variance, please step forward. Anybody in opposition to the variance, please step forward to testify. Thank you. At this point, I'll close the public meeting, or public portion of the meeting, and open the discussion.
I'm in favor, sounds awesome.
I know I've seen in the area from Riverview Avenue, I've seen homes back in that area with giant decks on the back of them that may be even bigger than the one proposed. And I assume they've obviously run through code and everything.
I hope so.
Maybe.
If I'm not mistaken, I think this gentleman that testified first, and your name was what, sir?
David McDaniel.
Mr. McDaniel said, I think his deck might be larger than the proposed deck by the Royals. That's
We're in competition with each other.
any other discussion?
So
Anyone wish to make a motion?
I'll make one. I propose that we grant this request for variance under the section 1, under area and dimension variance review criteria. Special conditions and circumstances exist, and if you go down there further, or steepness of the lot is right in there.
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Cash?
Yes.
Mr. Gross?
Yes.
Mr. Mattel?
Yes.
Mr. Wanamaker?
yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
The next, all right, here we go. Next case is variance application for an area and dimensional variance. Case number 325. This request is by RDA Group Architects for an area and dimensional variance for the property at 4455 Elliott Drive to allow for drive-through equipment within 250 feet of a residential dwelling unit and decrease the number of required stacking spaces between the pickup window and order box to 3 cars. The parcel is Zone B2 Community Business District. Ms. Fetters?
Per the application submitted, the applicant requests a variance due to the property being a corner lot, having 2 fronts, making it difficult to locate a drive-through lane that is set back 25 feet from the right-of-way. Additionally, the applicant notes that the previous use of the site was for a bank, which also had a drive-through, so will not affect surrounding properties, and the applicant does not believe, if granted, the variance would affect the delivery of governmental services, as they will not be changed. Per the Middletown Development Code, Chapter 120601, Part E, Part 7, drive-through facilities, general standards, the Part 2 of this, audible electronic devices such as loudspeakers, automobile service order devices, and similar instruments shall not be located within 200 feet of any residential dwelling unit. The applicant requests a variance to permit a loudspeaker or similar device to be located within 250 feet of any residential dwelling unit. And the reason that this is before you tonight is because instead of utilizing one of the existing drive-through speakers, they are moving it around to the side of the building, which puts it in closer proximity to one of those non-conforming uses in that district. And then the other half, Chapter 121805, Vehicle Stacking Space Requirements, Part A, Part 3. Part A, the minimum stacking spaces required for a restaurant is 6 stacking spaces, measured from the first pickup window that is closest to the drive-through sign or order box. The amount of stacking spaces required to only have, the applicant requests a variance to decrease that to only 3 stacking spaces required from the pickup window, between the pickup window and order box. And then per the Middletown Development Code, notice was published in the Journal News as well as sent to all property owners contiguous and directly across the street, and no comments have been received to date.
That's it? Oh,
Do you mean flip through the supporting documentation?
yeah, just run through these so that we can, all right.
There's the review criteria and then the time limit and appeals process. And then that will conclude my staff report.
Any questions for Ms. Fetters?
The applicant is present.
Yes, the applicant is present.
Then I guess most of the questions would be for them. There's no curb required for that short of a stacking lane.
I would have to check up.
We've run into that
on that.
before with, but I didn't know if it is, if we shorten it, if that's required or.
So that's kind of outside the scope of the zoning variance that we're dealing with right now, but that would be something that would be vetted by other city staff during their permitting process.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Could you go to the overhead, well, the drawing which shows the stacking? Go back. Right there. Is that the city's drawing or is that?
That is straight out of the development code.
That's straight out of the development
Straight out of
code,
there.
okay.
I thought it would be useful
I
for
was-
you guys to see.
I'm trying to think, is that doesn't fit that building, and I'm thinking that was part of the a drawing relative to this building, relative to this building. Okay. Any other questions?
Got one, Mr. Cash. Any type of precedent?
The BZA does not rule on precedent.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ms. Fetters? Okay, at this point, I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the variance, please come forward to be sworn. Ma'am, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And identify yourself if you would.
I see here that the canopy is gonna be enclosed. That's gonna be all interior space. So traffic is gonna go out, if you're looking at that, far to the right, and then along the back, then exit onto Roosevelt. So, okay, and then with that in the back of the, okay, then yeah.
I was also going to say the same thing when I saw this about the noise. There's not just one, but two auto shops that border. Yeah, so I don't think that's going to be much of an issue.
Go back to the photographs of the bank. Okay, ma'am, let's see if I understand. The top photograph, I think, is a view from Elliott Drive, and obviously to the left over there where that sign, that's Roosevelt, right? Is the traffic flow anticipated to go directly in from this front portion of the drive-through, or go around and come through the other way? I understand that, yes, when you said entrance, I didn't think you were gonna have cars going each way in that drive-through. Yeah, right, your property has an entrance there from Roosevelt. And so the intended drive-through is from the east side there, which is the front of the building that we're looking at now. Mm-hmm.
If I'm interpreting it correctly, it's like entry from Elliott and then like around the back and then exit out onto Roosevelt. So it's kind of like doing a squiggle through the.
Okay.
You can see, well, maybe.
Use the highlight, yeah.
You'll come in here. You can see their proposed stacking lanes right here. Here's your pickup window, and then you can exit out.
Oh, okay. Only one drive-through lane. Okay. When I saw the three there that the bank had, I was anticipating that you were using all.
No, that's gonna be enclosed.
So you've got more cars stacking between the order box and the pickup window than, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. About 4 cars probably in that stack between order box and pickup window. And you're asking then for the variance for the reducing the 3 to the 6 to the, if that's an accurate representation of the car size. Okay.
And that's moving the speaker box counterclockwise. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's right there,
Right there. Okay,
That's
thank you.
the
Thank you.
anticipated. So where is it now? Is it,
back here.
okay,
So this is the 3 banks
right.
for the bank right now. It's all going to be enclosed for additional storage, I believe.
I don't have any further questions.
Any other questions? Okay, Ms. Ruiz, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the variance, please come forward. Anyone in opposition to the variance, please come forward to be sworn. Not seeing any further witnesses, I'll close the public portion of this meeting. Thoughts?
Seems sensible to me, considering the size of the lot.
Well, and honestly, I believe that's gonna cause less congestion and issues than it was when there was an ATM line when it was a bank.
Yeah, that, and I think what resonated with me was that they moved the speaker box because people can't make up their mind to give longer queue back there for the stacked lane than there would be between the box and the window. Does that make sense?
Can I ask staff a question? I know it's after the fact, but, and if it raises any questions for any of the witnesses, they're welcome to come back to testify. Where is the closest residence to this bank that's within 250 feet? Is it across Roosevelt? It'd have to be.
No, it is right,
Other
it is
side?
right here.
Oh, other side of Midas.
See that little R right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a house. So it's a
Oh, that's-
non-conforming use in the district.
Oh,
Yeah, there's a couple of them along.
yeah. Which, of course, the Midas is in between the two.
Yes.
Okay,
And those homes were probably there before the district boundaries
sure
were
they
drawn, so.
I'm sorry. Does that raise any questions by witnesses that, Mr. Ruiz? Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts, any discussion?
Based on what I've seen and heard, I'd move to grant the variance, both for the sound box and the stacking lane variances.
And
I'll second.
a review criteria
Review criteria.
exception?
If you could, I believe number 9, where the spirit and intent of the code is still being observed, even with this variance being granted.
Thank you. Second to the motion with that criteria noted?
All right, Mr. Cash?
Yes.
Mr. Gross?
Yes.
Mr. Mintel?
Yes.
Mr. Wanamaker?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
All right. I believe that is the last application for variance, and that brings us to old or new business. Does anyone have any old or new business? Is there any old or new business that was pending?
No, nothing pending. I just wanted to check in with you guys and see if you wanted to do any training for the upcoming year. How you guys feel about your review criteria? Anything like do you need training on that? Training on just general
I personally would
practices?
appreciate some training on best practices and like some protocol and stuff like that. Just been kind of showing up and doing my best.
All right. We'll probably put that on the April, either before or after the April. Your March agenda's looking pretty busy, so.
Yeah, I think training is beneficial. I've been through the training. Was that when Ben Yoder provided that to us?
I was there too.
Yeah. Stefan, were you there?
Wasn't there.
You weren't here yet on the board. It's because AJ, you're on Planning Commission. Yes. And as am I, and the mindset is different. Here, we find ourselves to be in a kind of I hate to use legal terms, an appellate review board, where we're seeing whether a variance being requested fits within a review criteria that justifies it, because the development code is there for a reason, and we're supposed to be abiding by the development code. So I think it's very good because I'll tell you one thing that I learned that I should have known was that the difference between review criteria for an area and dimensional variance versus a use variance. Use
Instead of
variance.
picking one, you've got to use them all.
Yeah, you got to get them all. You got to satisfy them all if you want a use variance. So it's, yeah, I think it's a good idea for training.
All right, I will get with
All right.
our council on that.
Any,
And that's
any-
it for me.
Any other new or old business?
Welcome new
Okay.
members.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Aye. I don't think we take rolls on adjournment, do we?
All right.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Claire.